Hello, my name is Julian.Frazier, and I am your fitness psychologist. You've noticed there's no PowerPoint today. I'm just coming at you and I having a one-sided discussion, kind of like podcast style. We're going to talk about the calorie and why calories in, calories out does not work, and why we should probably move on to something that's a little bit more effective. And so when I hear a lot of folks, even in 2021, discussing the, I guess, basic tenets of weight loss and fitness, they start with this idea of the caloric deficit, that you should intake less food than you are burning, and therefore you will burn the difference in fat. And that over time, that will lead to weight loss. This has been the mantra that a number of folks have been recanting for decades now, and they'll usually cite the laws of thermodynamics or something like that in order to sound smart. But here's what we know, that since we have been basing weight loss programs off of this whole calories in, calories out idea, which has been approximately the 70s, folks have only proceeded to gain weight. The average BMI of the individual in developed and developing nations has only been increasing over the past few decades. And so if you ask most people, they know what a calorie is, and they have an idea of the calories in, calories out model. And yet, somehow, in spite of this widespread knowledge of this mantra that should be so foundational to weight loss, the average BMI only continues to increase, at least in a clinical sense. And so we might have some ideas that, we've been basing all of our weight loss programs off of this idea, and yet it isn't working. Maybe we need to move past the calories in, calories out mantra. Again, this is something which a number of fitness gurus cringe at. They want to defend the caloric deficit model, and that's fine, but there's things that they're missing. There's something that they don't understand, and that's that the calories in, calories out model doesn't work because it betrays biology or because it betrays physics, thermodynamics, whatever. It doesn't work because it's incompatible with our psychobiology. There's something about the human psyche and psychology which is incompatible with the calories in, calories out model. And so for as long as we keep pushing this idea, it's going to continue to be ineffective, in large part because humans were never meant to turn their food into calories. And so let's explain why this is and what we can do instead that might be more effective. And so anytime that you take a food and try to think of it in terms of calories, it's reductionistic. It's a very simple idea of how we can think of the food. And so there's a pretty big difference between, say, raw foods, fruits and vegetables, and fast food, junk foods, things that are highly processed. And yet we can quantify both of them in terms of calories. And so while we lose a lot of the nuance, we lose a lot of the context, things like the nutritional density of the food, the kinds of nutrients, vitamins, minerals that the food would provide us in order to prevent any sorts of deficits in nutrition or anything in the body from going wrong. We ignore all those things when we think about the calorie. But more so, what happens when we take something that is a human experience? Now, food is a human experience. It's an essential human experience because you don't have a choice but to eat. Like, you have to eat something, even if you have it routine, regimented down to, I eat exclusively Huel and Soylent, and that's all that I consume. You still have to consume something in order to survive. And so our biology, our psyche, everything has been oriented in some ways around this biological imperative. And so we're taking something that is a biological imperative and we're attempting to quantify it. And our brain quantifies things with the frontal lobes, the most frontal form of it, when we take things that are kind of this abstract phenomenon of eating and we turn it into numbers that we can put into an Excel sheet. And so any program based off of calories in, calories out is going to require you to do some journaling, tracking. It's going to require you to whip out an app or to whip out an Excel sheet or at least a calculator and to do some number crunching. And those are parts of the brain that are different than the parts of the brain that tell you that you're hungry and tell you that you need to eat and that process the sensory experience and phenomenon of eating. completely different parts of the brain. And so we're asking one part of the brain to manage another. Okay. And so when we're using those higher order parts of the brain to manage the more reptilian and mammalian and uh, limbic parts of the brain, when we're trying to use our executive functioning to crunch numbers and make decisions, well, that takes energy, but it's also very difficult to do. It takes a lot of mindfulness, it takes a lot of conscious effort, right? A lot of people try to wrap this up as willpower. What happens is we focus on a lot of heuristics. So whenever I quantify food, a heuristic is like a rule of thumb. And one easy one is that some things are good and others are bad. And so I'm just only going to do the good things and ignore the bad things. And so what does a calories in, calories out model tend to promote? Well, on average, it says that the good thing is the thing which is fewer calories, eating less, or eating a food that has fewer calories in general. And the bad thing is eating things that are very high in calories. And so there's a heuristic right there. Good is less calories, bad is more calories. So let's say I eat a diet of 2,000 calories a day. Okay. In order to be in a caloric deficit, I need to eat less than that. So my aim, my goal is 1,800 calories a day. That's 200 calories less. Here's the math. And I'm thinking that's something that seems like I can do, reasonable. And I'm tracking all of this. Well, I've created a goal in my mind. And anytime we create a goal, especially if it's something that we're striving towards, it links up with our dopamine system, right? Now, we've talked about dopamine in the past in other videos, but it's basically the system that gives us anticipation, reward, excitement, motivation. And so whenever I feel myself getting closer to my goal, I get a little dopamine, a little bit of a emotional pat on the back, a neurochemical thumbs up, if you will. And so if I manage to eat fewer calories in a day, once I'm crunching all the numbers, if I'm in a caloric deficit and that's my goal, it gives you a little thumbs up. It says, good job. And I feel accomplished. I feel like I did something good today. And I want to do the same tomorrow. Well, I'm also thinking that my goal is weight loss. That's the whole point of this. So anytime I step on the scale, if the number is less than the number it was yesterday, then I'm also going to get that little dopamine thumbs up. This seems like things are working exactly as they should, right? That we have a goal, we're striving towards it. Whenever we get closer to our goal, we feel better, we feel good. And that motivates us to continue to strive even more. We're using this heuristic, this rule of thumb to measure that. Okay, something's good, something's bad. Only do the good things. Okay, what seems to be the problem? Here it is. If I'm eating 2,000 calories, and to be in a caloric deficit, I need to eat less than that. And I eat 1,800 calories today, and I do the number crunching, and I feel good about myself. Good job. For a lot of folks, here's what happens. And they're not thinking of this consciously, but their brain is thinking, well, it was good when we ate fewer than 2,000 calories. We ate 200 calories less than we normally do, and that felt good because that got us closer to our goal, the calories in, calories out goal. What if tomorrow we only ate 1,600 calories? Then we're going to get even closer to our goal even faster. And then we try that the next day. We try to eat even less. And we crunch the numbers, and what do we know? We only ate 1,600 calories today, and we feel good because, boy, we were in that caloric deficit. We did even better than we did yesterday. Do you see where this is going? That the psyche is engineered in such a way that if this continues ad infinitum, our brain goes, you know what would be a great way to be in a caloric deficit? If we didn't eat at all. Oh, what a tantalizing prospect. If I just didn't eat at all, then that means that I'm in a 2,000 calorie caloric deficit. I will lose weight so fast, right? And of course, fitness industry gurus and a lot of folks are howling at this point that that's not what we want. That's not what we're thinking about. When I say calories in, calories out, of course you should eat. Of course you should, give your body nutrients. But that's not how the psyche is oriented. The psyche is oriented at this point because we've turned food into numbers. And in order to manage those numbers, we need heuristics, rules of thumb. That's how our frontal lobes kind of can manage all these rules that we have to live under. And some of those rules are eating less, good, eating more, bad. And so eating even less, better. Eating even less than that is better. We see this perfect storm of a situation where our brain, when working as it should, is oriented to promote some sort of eating disorder. Now, most folks find that the diet that they're trying is unsustainable and it's not effective before they get to the point where they're developing eating disorder. And so a lot of folks are serial dieters. They'll try a diet, they're not able to adhere to it or stick to it for very long. And part of that reason is because, again, the brain doesn't exactly jive with this idea that every time I eat, I have to whip out my app or my calculator or my spreadsheet and dial things in. It's not a part of the, I guess, of a mindfully eating program. I mean, most people are way too busy to do that anyway. But that's neither here nor there. And for whatever reason, before they get to the point where it's that unhealthy, the diet itself fails. And then they go back into a process of eating the way that they were. And it's likely that if they've flirted with so much of a caloric deficit, that they've gone into a place of scarcity, of undereating, that they've done a little bit of metabolic damage. And so we can see that a lot of folks who are serial dieters, they might lose a few pounds at the beginning, then they'll plateau, then they'll discontinue the diet, and then they'll gain that weight back and then some, because there's been a little bit of metabolic adjustment. Our body just experienced a small trauma. It was like, oh, there's a period of time where we can go without food. Maybe if we dial our metabolism down a little bit, then we can be prepared for future situations where we don't have food like this. It's a survival imperative in and of itself. And so there's some folks who fall into the camp of serial dieters. There's some folks who have some personality traits that have some stick-to-itiveness, is one way I can think of it, right? So they get to the point where they're in a caloric deficit, they're eating less and less, and they're a little bit neurotic, which means that they're sensitive to threats, they're sensitive to things like good or bad, right? And they want to stay in the lane of good because good means that things are okay. Bad means that things are icky and uncertain, right? And so they're very sensitive to these rules. They're also very organized. They're very highly conscientious, right? These are personality traits that we're thinking about. And so they're used to this idea of quantifying things and tracking them. And they like the idea of structuring food as numbers because it's a little bit easier for their mind. And so they might continue with this process ad infinitum. And that's where we end up with really negative situations where folks are starving themselves, eating starvation diets. They're caught up in these processes of restriction and binging, those sorts of things. Okay. I hope that we're figuring this out, that, okay, do you need to be in a caloric deficit in order to lose weight? Likely, right? I'm going to go ahead and say that in most cases, that is true. However, this idea that calories in, calories out is the foundation of all weight loss attempts is clearly leading to ways of thinking and patterns of thinking that, it's kind of how our brain's supposed to work. It's kind of structured that way to reward things that are in line with our goals, but it's incompatible because if you take it ad infinitum, it's unsustainable. It does more harm than good. And it's done more harm than good for a lot of different people. And so what's a different way that we can think about it? What's a different way we can think about this that works with our psyche as opposed to against it? And no situation is perfect because we can see how, if taken to an extreme, anything can be dangerous. And to be fair, this is not medical advice necessarily, that folks should still work with their healthcare professionals in order to make decisions that are prudent for them. This is just for information's sake. But instead of a calories in, calories out model, I suggest that we focus on a more quality over quantity model. And so, what does this look like? This means over time, we substitute lower quality food options for higher quality food options. If we are given two options and both of them are relatively unhealthy, whatever that means, but one seems to be slightly less unhealthy, then we just choose the one that we believe to be more healthy for us. Given the number of options that we have today, we can almost always find an alternative to the foods that we're eating, the junk foods, the fast foods. We can usually always find an alternative which is better for us. And by over time substituting lower quality options for higher quality options, we don't have to worry about the quantity as much. One thing that I've done in a past video, and I love to do with clients who I'm working with, is we'll look up their favorite fast food item. Let's say the Chalupa. And we'll see that depending on the Chalupa that you get, it's 400 to 500 calories for this little taco thing. And then I say, okay, what if I had a bag of broccoli the size of my head? How much calories do you think is in this bag of broccoli? And they'll guess, and then we'll turn around to the nutritional factoids, and we'll do some number crunching, and we'll say, in this whole big bag of frozen broccoli the size of my head, it's about 75 calories. And how long do you think it would take you to eat this whole big bag of broccoli compared to a chalupa? I could probably throw that chalupa down in 5 minutes, but man, even a fourth of a bag of broccoli the size of my head, I'm going to be full. I'm not going to want to eat anymore. I'm going to be done, right? And what do you think is more nutritionally valuable for us? Broccoli or a chalupa? Now, there's likely some things in chalupa that broccoli doesn't have, but in terms of caloric density, the quality of broccoli blows the chalupa out of the water. And also, you don't have to worry about calories because you can have a chalupa, which is 500 calories, or you can have a single bowl serving of broccoli and it's 25 calories. And sure, that is a 400 plus calorie difference. And it's a little bit of it's illustrating a point, right? You're not always going to be choosing between the healthiest thing you can think of and the least healthy thing that you can think of. But when we're thinking about sustainable life changes, which lead to weight loss over time, which we can maintain, making small decisions between different items of different qualities allows us to lose weight naturally over time. We don't have to worry about counting calories. We don't have to worry about busting out the apps or busting out the spreadsheets. The only folks who may need to do that to that level of specificity are folks who are high level athletes who are performing at a high level and need to really fine tune these things. I'm thinking like bodybuilders, right, who are tracking macronutrients and micronutrients and all these different things in order to try to sculpt their body into like a human statuesque figure and then some, right? But for the average person, that's not what they're trying to do. And that's why it doesn't fit into their lifestyle to begin with. And all of their attempts in the moments that they are motivated to fit this calories in, calories out model into their life usually fail because they're unsustainable. They can't fit it into their lifestyle into a way that makes sense for an extended period of time. Some folks can stick to it for a few weeks, and some folks can even stick to it for a few months. But ultimately, we'll find that a lifestyle is not meant to be counting calories. Again, for hundreds of thousands of years, human beings have not been counting calories, and we've been just fine. Only now, in the past few decades, we've been counting calories, and somehow it's doing the opposite of what we would hope for it to do. And so instead of calories in, calories out, let's start thinking about quality over quantity. Let's start thinking about substituting things that we know aren't great for us for things that we think are a little bit better. Even if that means that when we do drive through the drive-through, we're choosing something that's a little bit healthier. I'm choosing the Southwest salad at Wendy's instead of the double triple baconator, right? I'm still eating fast food, but hey, I have some options here. I'm going to choose one that looks like it's higher quality to me. If we can have that mindset, that rule of thumb, then over time, it's likely to be more effective than this whole calories in, calories out. And sure, we can get to the point where we're obsessing over, okay, what's the best thing? What's the most healthy, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this idea called orthorexia, this idea of being obsessed with making the best choices in terms of quality. And we can likely continue to work on a model of weight loss that is going to be more effective, even for those individuals. And so I really strongly advocate that folks be working with their providers, with their healthcare team, with coaches or nutritionists or registered dietitians, because then you can really tailor a lot of these messages specifically for you. But in general, if we recognize that this whole calories in, calories out thing isn't working, then I think it's about time, after 50 years of experimenting, that we start changing our focus. Now, I think that a few folks have started to do that. I think that the people who are more progressive in the way that they think about food and nutrition are recognizing that the psychobiology, the behavioral aspects are becoming more and more important. And you can see hints of that in people saying that we should focus more on lifestyle change than on diets, right? You can see hints of this. I'm going to leave 3 books in the description below of folks who have described the calories in, calories out model really well, and folks who have offered some changes in terms of orienting ourselves towards a sustainable lifestyle change as opposed to these diets, heuristics that drive us towards eating less and less and less, no matter the context. And as well as just some ideas around, okay, what might those substitutes be? What are the foods that should be quote unquote healthy for me? And what should I be keeping my eyes out for if I am going to start substituting things which I know are lower quality options for some higher quality options in my diet? Those are going to be things that are available to you. As far as I know, they're available both in book form and audiobook form, and none of them are mine. And I don't make any money by showing them to you. I wish I did. One day I'm going to have books and stuff of my own, hint, hint, wink, wink, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I hope that this hasn't been too long, and I've managed to hold your attention long enough to explain that this whole calories in, calories out looks good on paper, looks good when we're doing the math. But when we apply that math to the human psyche, there's an incompatibility which has led to decades of weight loss failures from programs based off of this calories in, calories out model. It's time to do something different. So I've been your fitness psychologist, Julian.Frazier. Again, this is a weekly thing. I'm releasing these things free, ad-free. I make no money off of this. This is literally just putting my passions on the internet so that they're outside of my brain, and maybe I can share it with a dozen people. That would be great. In the meantime, if you have any questions for me, feel free to hit me up on social media and those sorts of things. Give me an email if you like. I can leave that in the description. I'm pretty available. I'm not unbusy, but I love those conversations enough and nerd out on them enough that I'm pretty much always open to some nerding. So if you want to nerd with me, hit me up. Give me a like, comment, subscribe, those sorts of things, notification. But I don't know, what do people do nowadays? Either way, those are things that give me some dopamine. And I'll see you in next week's video. Blurry camera. Okay, bye.